Hello Internet, welcome back to From to Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. In 1962, Huxley wrote his book Island, which was his vision of a utopian environment, the perfect community. Uh, but it's Brave New World that is always remembered and discussed. And when we talk about Brave New World, we compare it to 1984, which is the better dystopia, which was more predictive of the world in which we now live. 1984's news speak and coercive society, or Brave New World's more subtle manipulation, and the truth is maybe that we live in a combination of the two. And then when you talk about these books, people will ask you, well, maybe you haven't read We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, which is maybe the originator of many of the ideas in both of those books. People who live in a kind of glass dome, where sort of panopticon, where everything is visible, where you have to get pink tickets if you want to have intimate relationships with somebody else, a kind of society of total control, a great Russian dystopian book. In later years, dystopia as a form has just taken off. The Handmaid's Tale is a hugely beloved TV series now adapted from Atwood's book. The Hunger Games, which I really liked, was a series of young adult novels turned into one good film and some terrible sequels. You've got what's that book about farming humans from Argentina? Tender is the Flesh. That was a massive hit a couple of years ago. Personally, didn't like it much, but very well liked. That book, The Power, a kind of weird sort of feminist dystopia, trying to think about what would happen if women were the more powerful gender. I mean, really, once you start listing contemporary dystopian fiction, the list just goes on and on and on. That there's so many iterations of it, and there's also a trend now for rediscovering earlier dystopian books. It may be sort of cliche to say it at this point, but we are kind of entering a time in which dystopian fiction is almost comforting. Like the real world is the same as, or at least worse than, what people imagined in fiction. It's as if J.G. Ballard predicted the English Defence League and Tommy Robinson when he wrote Kingdom Come. It's as if Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 was a soft version of what the internet actually became. And many people have pointed out that we're at a point in history where the president of the United States is now like a reality TV star, wrestling cameo buffoon in league with fascist techno oligarchs. And people like Elon Musk are on Twitter talking about how Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park was a good idea, and at a point in time where dystopian fiction seems to have become aspirational for the people running the world, I sort of asked the question, maybe artists should start writing more utopias. Maybe we should be imagining the world as we would like it to be, instead of continually leaning into the worst imaginable poetics of the future. And I started thinking about this, and the cliche that happiness writes white. It's difficult to write a utopia because fiction needs conflict, narrative needs problems. And I was thinking, what are some books that are kind of utopian in tone, in style? And I thought about Becky Chambers' first novel, which is called A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. It's a science fiction novel about found family, aliens on a ship traveling a long distance through space, which is very kind of queer and supportive in the environment within the spaceship. There's little antagonism. What antagonism there is resolved. It's kind of cross-species affection. In a way, you couldn't get more woke than her first novel. And it's a very comforting and friendly read in a way that you almost never encounter, and especially not in sci-fi. And what's fascinating to me about Becky Chambers' first book is that I don't think a publishing house would have touched it, because it doesn't have conflict, it doesn't have terror, it doesn't have discomfort. It has this kind of as I say, comforting environment that it creates, that it allows you to live in. She's never really repeated this in her subsequent novels, but she actually got that first one crowdfunded. Like, people paid to fund her utopia. Capitalism would never have allowed it to flourish. There is Huxley, as I say, and there are strains of utopianism in D.H. Lawrence's novels, although they are set in quite a brutal reality. He has a certain type of attempt at utopian ethics running through his books, whatever you might think of his particular brand of politics. But the one that actually really sticks with me is a sort of satirical utopian time travel novel called Woman on the Edge of Time by Marge Piercy. Because in that book, you follow a character who is understood by the people around her to be suffering psychosis, but who meets people from different versions of the future. And she meets a kind of almost like hippie, anarcho-syndicalist community in a sort of back to the land, post-technology situation, who sort of take care of her, which is contrasted with the terrible, like, abusive, misogynistic life situation that she exists within. But then there's a slip at one point where they enter a dystopian future, which is sort of like 2 clicks away from where we are now. So you see this kind of utopia and dystopia contrasted against one another. And it also allows for a critique of the sort of current timeline that the book is existing within. I think also of The Strange Bird by Jeff VanderMeer, although this is in some future that is quite disconcerting and frightening and in many ways dystopian, there's some kind of beautiful post-human love story worked into that novella that gives some sense of hope. And I guess that was the books that came to mind for me, and I'd be interested to hear any other sort of utopias or utopian strands within fiction that anybody would be interested to share or to discuss. And I think either way, we probably need to start to imagine a different future. Stop being deterministic about this slide into a hellscape and try to reinvigorate the romantic utopian imagination in much the same way as maybe quantum black futurism attempt to do in their writings. So that's my thoughts on the topic for now. Maybe I'll follow this up another time, but please do jump in the comments and share your ideas with me. Thanks for now.